Escape room workers of Reddit. What's the most absurd thing players have done? I interviewed for a job at an escape room. They told me that one of their standard instructions you must tell every group is to not stick things in electrical outlets because too many people did it. One of them believed the clue was inside them. Escape room enthusiast here. We spent far more time than I care to admit trying to figure out what the hell the numbers written in Sharpie on the underside of the rug in the middle of the room meant. Turns out they were an inventory number from the thrift store the designer bought the thing from, and nobody else had ever noticed them before. We still won't won, but that wasted a lot of our time. I feel kinda bad about the time our group unscrewed half the pictures on the wall using a paper clip, since none of us had the sense to think that maybe the pictures being screwed down was a sign we weren't supposed to look behind them. Edit. To elaborate, we managed to crack the combination lock to a drawer which had a jar of paper clips in it, to which our reaction was, do we have to pick a lock at first? And then, hey, I think these fit perfectly into the screws but on the walls. Turns out, the actual purpose of the paper clips was to make a chain to dangle into a tube to pick up a key. Can't remember if we had a magnet or a hook to help, which we discovered after looking behind the one picture in the room not screwed down and finding the code to the combination lock on the drawer below the first one. One guy pissed on the wall, thinking the plaster was snow. Not an escape room worker, but second time I went to one, the owner told me that once a group decided to smash all the locks because they found the hammer on which a clue is written. They had to replace all locks and it is now a toy hammer. I'd like to say those people were morons, but when we found it, the same idea was discussed in our group. Not a worker, but was with a group of people, and one of them became so overwhelmed that almost immediately after walking in, they spun around and walked right back out again. In the Netherlands there is this prison escape room where everyone is a prisoner and you have to escape prison. It is done in an actual ancient prison. There are about 300 participants and 85 actors, mostly prison guards and some prisoners. They have over 15 storylines which you can follow and their other inmates, actors, which will lead those storylines and send you on quests. Coming back to the question, at the beginning they warned everyone that no physical contact is allowed because during the first time people would actually threat each other to get money and guards have been attacked. Also they have to warn people that you weren't supposed to try climbing the 50 feet high prison wall. Hey, one I can answer. Kinda. I was the dude in the room. It was my first 10-year-old brother's birthday party and children are dumb AF. It was themed around a nuclear power station that was gonna blow up the town. And essentially what happened was we had an hour to complete 3 rooms. We took 45 minutes to get through the first because kids kept throwing stuff around. One guy got freaked out thinking it was real and pressed a button to end the room. Thankfully it didn't work or something and my dad shouted at him. So he took a tantrum and fucking locked himself in a drawer. Then because the kids can't organize shit, we had to hunt for the most stressful 3 minutes of my life for the key. And then we got through and it was sorta okay from there cause a lot of kids up and left the room. Never again. Never. Ever. Again. At an escape room near me they had a group of lads on a stag do. These guys got very drunk and during the escape room thought they could escape via the sewers. They managed to rip out the manhole cover which was bolted down into concrete. This cover is now permanently broken as it's too expensive to fix, they said. Advised us not escape via the sewers. A group came in that disassembled some of the furniture, a bed and a desk, ripped some of the wallpaper off the walls and pulled the heads off some stuffed animals. I was the player here. This was a horror-themed escape house with people in costumes screaming at you from time to time, with chainsaws and shit. We were in a room with an open jail cage and we knew the next clue was in that cage, but it's pretty obvious that cage was designed to scare the shit out of whoever was inside. I waltzed in. The cage door slammed shut behind me. I took the note and slipped between the bars. We waited for several minutes until I slipped back into the cage so the game could progress. Later on, the workers told us they were really surprised when I had slipped out of their trap and were trying to figure out what to do next. Pulled the air vent covers off the walls, floor. Had to add in an official disclaimer in the rules spiel I did before they went in the room. No clues in the air vents. Customers were stupid a lot, but it was a pretty sweet gig overall. Obligatory, not a worker. Just done a lot of escape rooms and chatted with the staff. These are the dumbest people I've been told about. One of the rooms is based on Jumanji and has a waterfall with real water in it. Enough people have tried to drink the water that they had to tell people not to in their opening spiel. One of the rooms has a bunch of museum-style display cases with glass covering the top with different puzzles inside. One has sand in it and small holes in the top. Someone tried to tip the display case over and get the sand out so they could read the hidden message. When the game master told them to stop doing that, she stopped momentarily and then tried again 2 minutes later. The game master told her if she did it again she'd be kicked out, and the woman said, "Just making sure you're paying attention." People constantly try to pull up floorboards or tear down wallpaper in the horror-themed room. Even after they're told there's nothing hidden, they're warned not to do it or they'll get charged for the damage. Some of them tried to escape. I was a player and I was in a large cage. Through the bars I had to open a heavy lock. The cage was dimly lit with lead bars on the floor. I got the lock open, but due to it being heavy and me having to handle it through the bars, I dropped it on the lead bar. At first I thought the light turning off was part of the room. Turns out I broke the lead bar. There's been a few. The idiots initially tried cutting through their chains. They finally worked it out and one of them sawed through their leg and shot the other with a revolver we'd left in there. Lifted up all the tiles on the ceiling. I had to wonder exactly what clue brought them to that conclusion. Nothing said up, ceiling, above, yet every single tiles was down and, to their credit, piled in a corner. Not a worker, but the local escape room in my town has an absurd thing the players do to get clues. If we're stumped, we have to do the YMCA dance motions if we need help. Maybe a better question to ask would be, escape room enthusiasts, what is the most absurd thing you have done to win? If that was the question, I would say that I was in a room with a group of 6. We were separated into 2 groups and we had to get out of the jail cell and into a second room. Anyway, there was an electric panel with jumper cables used to complete the circuit. We had 2 of the 3 needed, so while the other 5 were working on the puzzle, my ingenuity took over and I found something else to short out the circuit and open the door. Sadly, we were all still in the cells. The guy running the room for us came in and asked how we got the door open. When I told him, he said, "That is the first time anyone has done that. We escaped with several minutes to go, but not before we accidentally opened the last clue prematurely." I think that they were glad to be rid of us. One time, a group was trying to figure out the code to a locked compartment. So this huge guy in the group decided this was a waste of time and tried to rip off the compartment door with his bare hands. He was almost successful, but we stopped him before he could do further damage to the door. He didn't understand what was wrong. Another one happened where a group were handcuffed and they couldn't find the key. The game master was trying to give them clues to find the key, but they still couldn't find it. So one group member thought it would be best to use his leg. There was a table in the room with some items on it. He proceeded to knock over all the items with one kick. That group didn't win. I know this kind of question's been asked before, but haven't seen it in ages, so figured why the heck not. Always some hilarious stories come of it. Shit on the floor. I was in a group. Ended up leading it. When someone went rogue and started tearing the evacuation map on the wall because it was paper. I guess some tend to believe anything destructible would be part of the game. Those three middle-aged girls who didn't really come for the puzzle but for the theme for their role-playing. I actually saw a question like this before, but I still want it to reach hot again as the answers on the last one were so hilarious. My dad owns an escape room in a small town in Norway, and the weirdest thing someone has done is probably trying to punch the camera. The guy was like 150 centimeters tall and couldn't reach it. After trying 3 times to punch it, he gave up. I'll weigh in with my mildly amusing escape room anecdote. Not that absurd, more anticlimactic. This was actually a break-in format where you were supposed to recover some locked-up MacGuffin. We were really close, and the next step evidently was to unlock a door. We solved the puzzle that we figured would allow us to do this. But then when we tried the door, it wouldn't open. So for the remaining 15 minutes or so, we scramble frantically looking for more clues to figure out how to open this damn door. But failed. When we asked about it afterwards, the guy was confused because the last puzzle we solved was the one that should have opened the door. After some back and forth, it turns out, the door just has a bit of a funny handle. Not part of the puzzle in any way. Just a door that works different from what you're used to. That's all that stood between us and sweet victory. Mate worked at an escape room, and he told me that some guys tried to smash a hole in the wall to get out because it was an Alcatraz-themed room. A kid I knew from school. His family owns an escape room business. The most things that happen is people trying to take things when it's clearly nailed down or nailed to the wall. Then he said that a little kid pissed in a bottle. First thing I had to learn working at an escape room, everything. Yes, everything in the room was going to be dismantled, pulled on, or messed with in some way. Have a screwdriver in the room. Maybe there's a clue in the light switch cover. Black light? Must have to take it completely apart. TV for clues? Must have to unplug, change inputs. And anything not nailed down is bound to be broken. Not a worker but been in there. So this was in school as a field trip. I came and we were separated in 2 groups. Boys and girls. We both picked a different escape room and we went in. The boys were just going around doing the instructions and okay. But when we left, the girls, half of them coming out fucking crying and shivering. I heard they lost and got jump scared. Not a worker, but a participant. My friend thought the solution to a puzzle was to press on the corners of several framed pictures in a specific sequence. The box wasn't unlocking itself from what he thought was the correct solution. So he pressed on the corners harder. Needless to say, one of the frames broke and the glass panel covering the picture fell out and shattered on the ground. We had to call the workers in to help clean up the glass shards. Didn't get in any trouble and we ended up escaping the room though. The escape room was 2 rooms. But the door to the first was broken, so it was always open. So when we unlocked the first door we thought that it wasn't actually open. Closed it and went back to looking for clues. In our defense, there was a light above it that was red. We thought that if it opened it would turn green. I was pissed cause we wasted 15 minutes and without that we would have had the record time and won a free game of laser tag. I used to have an escape room called Butcher's Dungeon. Anyways, at one point you had to make a sacrifice. One member should have been tied up and then I dressed as a butcher take him away. They acted like they were tying him up and leaving, but when I walked in as a butcher, they freaking started attacking me 1v4 and tied me up as a sacrifice. Even though I kept saying it's not supposed to be like that. Only did they listen when I started mentioning their families. Not terribly ridiculous, but me and the husband loved them and wanted to share our love of them with our family. When we got out of the escape room, the super amazing nuclear explosion room in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the room operator was cracking up laughing. I guess at one point, in order to get keys or clues, my over-enthusiastic husband had picked up my 8-year-old nephew by the ankles upside down and was shoving him in bar rails. I had no idea he was doing this, but the operator was dying. I have a fun one. The escape room I used to work in had an outdoors riddle hunt alongside the normal escape room setup. The boss never cared to explain to me how the outdoors hunt worked, so I always picked shifts only when no one had ordered the outdoors thing. Once, however, unannounced, this drunk bachelorette party showed up claiming that they ordered the outdoors hunt. There was some bug in the ordering software, and while I was explaining myself, they demanded a striptease. I did not do it, obviously. Regardless, they did the room instead, and pretty well actually, and then they gave me a fat tip. Cheers. Not a worker but player here. Me and my so thought it would be a good idea to be drinking before it, and about 20 minutes in, my bladder was about to burst and I couldn't think about any of the puzzles, and so I had to ring the buzzer to be let out of the room to go to the toilet. Was so embarrassed cause this happened twice in the same session. Top comment, not an escape room worker. Every fucking time on this sub. Me and my siblings were in an escape room, and we got a clue. That was, you should sit down and think, and we thought we should take the chair apart, so we did. We got oil from the chair all over the floor. A worker had to come in and stop us.